Alright, yeah, welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and we are back for our weekly series, the first one with Ravnica Allegiances. So, right off the bat, because the format is very much fresh in everyone's minds, the state of the metagame right now is kind of in flux, which basically means most people end up running aggro lists and things that are nice and simple, kill really quick, get yourselves your packs super quick. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building, or we're going to be playing a deck, should I say, that preys upon aggro lists quite a lot. So this week we're going to be playing Black-White Control. So this is one of the few control lists that just really hates upon the current aggro metagame at the moment. But it does, of course, have a few pieces here and there just to make sure that we can deal with absolutely anything. It is a sideboard kind of deck at the moment, so it has loads of little pieces here and there throughout the deck that are maybe not good against aggro, but we can take those out and then shove loads of stuff from our sideboard in there. So, let's have a look at the deck, shall we? So, this is actually one that I built in the past. So, if anyone's seen the Black-White Control, this will seem quite familiar to you, but we are including quite a fair few new Ravnica Allegiance cards. So, before the new set came out, I actually used to have Cleansing Novas in here, which were one of my ways of dealing with artifacts and enchantments, and it's just not really the ideal method of dealing with it, mostly because one of our win cons is Dawn of Hope and Fountain of Renewal. This combo is pretty sweet. Most of you will see it before if you've been on the channel for a very short amount of time. Fountain of Renewal is a 1-mana artifact. It says at the beginning of your upkeep you gain 1 life, so really good at helping you stabilize against red decks. 1 life, incidentally, from the very start of the game is very hard. It basically halves the amount of damage that most creatures are dealing, which is fun. And you can also sacrifice it to draw a card, should you need to, though in an aggro matchup you probably won't want to be doing that. The card that combos with it, though, is Dawn of Hope. So this is a turn 2 play, 1 and a white enchantment. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 2, and if you do, draw a card, which is pretty sweet. So this is not only a really good combo against aggro because you're gaining life left, right, and center, and it also has a 4-mana 3 and a white option to create a 1/1 soldier token with lifelink. So it's really good at blocking aggro creatures. It is also superb against control metas as well, because this is a turn 2 combo that you can get down underneath a counter spell that basically says that you are drawing 2 additional cards every turn, which is very hard for counterspell based control decks to keep up with. So really sweet there. It's also something as well that stops you from needing to even play cards into counterspells, because once you've got Dawn of Hope and Fountain of Renewal down and a reasonable amount of mana, this is a superb mana sink. So we're going to be paying 4 mana every other turn to create a token. Our opponent's holding all of these counters ready to counter the next threat that we have to play, but our win con has been on the board since turn 2, so there's really nothing that we need to do except for just pump all of our mana into Dawn of Hope. So that's kind of the idea. In terms of removal for creatures, we have 2 copies of Cast Down, 1 and a black instant speed, destroy target non-legendary creature, so this hits quite a lot of the cards in the format at the moment. This is basically our answer to all of the big creatures in a cheap method, so we're running 2 copies of that. Against the aggro lists, we are running Moment of Craving, 1 and a black instant speed, target creature gets -2/-2 until the end of the turn, and you gain 2 life, so this will hit pretty much everything in Boros aggro, mono red and red black. It kills virtually every single creature they have. You have to play a little bit carefully with things like Runaway Steamkin, because of course they can play red spells and pump out of that -2/-2 range, so kill that card very early. It is a problem for us, but I mean, problems down the line aren't too much trouble though, because we do have things like Mortify, which is 1 white and a black, instant speed, destroy target creature or enchantment, so this is taking the place of Cleansing Nova. We really didn't need the amount of board wipes that we had, and honestly, we have a cheaper one coming out of Ravnica Allegiances, which we will get to momentarily. But this also allows you to deal with enchantments targeting rather than a board wipe version, and as I mentioned, we really don't want to be killing artifacts and enchantments because we have all sorts of synergies with that, so that one-sided board wipe was not really very one-sided for us, unfortunately. We are very artifact based. Speaking of artifacts, we have 2 thematic compasses. A 2-mana artifact that can pay 3 and tap it to search a library for basic land cards, so this helps us fix our mana in the early game, and later down the line as well, if we have 7 or more lands, you transform Thematic Compass into what is effectively Maze of Ith. It adds 1 colourless mana, and you can also tap it to untap target attacking creature an opponent controls, and remove it from combat. So if your opponent just has 1 creature in play, then it is never going to get combat damage in a million years, so long as Spires of Vraska is around to stop it. So in those aggro matchups, when they're playing 1 card a turn, you're drawing 2 cards a turn with your Dawn of Hope Fountain combo, and one of them is likely to be removal, because a lot of this deck is just creature removal. So if they have 1 creature around, you're not really incentivized to kill it right away, because Spires of Vraska can slow it down significantly, which means you can really be smart about your where you place all of your removal spells. We also have 4 copies of Treasure Map. This is our major form of card advantage. A 2-mana artifact. You can pay 1 and tap it to scry 1. You put a landmark counter on Treasure Map, and then if there are 3 or more landmark counters on it, remove those counters, transform Treasure Map, and create 3 colourless token treasures that can add either mana, so this could be ramp if we need it, but the likelihood is that we actually want to save them for Treasure Cove, which is a colourless land that can also sack treasures to draw cards. So once it flips, this card is effectively a 2-mana scry 3, draw 3 over a period of 6 turns, which is pretty good indeed. Later down the line though, when we've got significant card advantage, what we want to be doing is holding those tokens, and we want to be using those for things like Karn's -2 here. So Karn is one of our win cons as well, our alternative win con as opposed to the Dawn of Hope. Karn has a -2 effect on here. He allows us to create some 0/0 colourless construct tokens that get +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So they pump themselves and they get pumped off of other constructs, but they also get benefit from treasure maps that have been unflipped, treasure tokens that have been created off of the treasure map, and thematic compasses as well in the early game should we still have these around. They will of course flip into lands and stop becoming artifacts as well, so something to keep in mind there. But yes, this is one of our ways of ending the game, essentially. Karn is also a pretty interesting planeswalker in himself. He is the Lord of Lands, after all. The +1 is the best way of making your land drops. You tick up, reveal the top 2 cards of your library, and an opponent chooses one of them. You put that into your hand, and then exile the other with a silver counter on it. So you pseudo draw 2 cards with Karn's tick up, but your opponent gives you the worst one, and you can minus later down the line to go get the other one if you want to do that. So likelihood is that you get a land and something else, and they will always give you the land. So from turns 4 onwards, Karn is going to be making your land drops every single turn, which is wonderful because we want to be making our land drops because our win con alternatively is going to be Dawn of Hope, which is one of the best mana sinks in Standard at the moment. So if they give us land, it is benefiting us. If they give us action, then it is also benefiting us. Speaking of action, we have Kaya, Orzhov Usurper. This is one of the brand new cards out of Ravnica Allegiances, and one that I want to test out. I'm not sure if she is perfect in the main board just yet. We also have one in the sideboard for later, just in case she is super good. I wanted to bring her in against things like Golgari and Drakes. Drakes really cares about the size of their graveyard, so I wanted to test this one out a little bit. She's a 3-mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker. She ticks up, exiles up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard, and then you gain 2 life if at least 1 creature card was exiled this way. So I'm trying this one out. I'm not sure if she's perfect just yet because she doesn't really do much other than just straight up graveyard hit and incidental life gain along the way. But against Drakes, when they're cycling through their deck, they're putting things like Arclight Phoenix in there. They're putting cantrips and stuff like that in there, like jumpstart cards. Kaya allows us to keep their graveyard under control and keep it really, really small. So things like Search for Azcanta are no longer going to flip. Enigma Drake is not going to have very much power at all if you are keeping their graveyard very much under control. And we'll gain a little bit of life as well, killing Phoenixes along the way. We can use our Moment of Cravings to kill the Phoenix, untap, and then use Kaya to get rid of them for good. Against like Golgari midrange as well, it basically shuts off their finalities. If you can get her down early, you can start eating away at all of their creatures, gaining a little bit of life along the way, and then the recursion that makes Golgari midrange really annoying is basically reduced somewhat. So we're going to try her out a little bit. Her -1's not going to hit too much, but in an aggro matchup, it does actually do a fair amount. we can hit things like Gitu Lava Runners, which are 1/2s, which are most likely going to be 2/2s. We can get rid of Fanatical Firebrands, all of that sort of stuff. We've even got the new cutie Devil, Footlight Fiend, I think. So there are a few things that we can actually hit with Kaya's -1, though it's not going to be the most used ability on Kaya. And finally, we can use the -5, which is somewhat of a win condition, depending on your opponent's current life total. Kaya, Orzhov Usurper, deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards in that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. So it's a good way to stabilize if you have been eating away at your opponent's graveyard, and it is also a great way to finish off your opponent should they have plenty of cards in their exile. Hopefully we'll have been beating down a fair bit with Dawn of Hope tokens, so their life total will be significantly low enough. And Kaya on her own seems a little bit underpowered, so most people are going to leave her alone as well. They'll be thinking, oh, he's just going to eat our graveyard. I'm not a graveyard deck, I'll leave her alone, that kind of thing. So she'll just build up value over time. That's what I'm hoping. We'll have to see if that ends up panning out. From the playtesting that I've been doing, she's been reasonable. I don't think she's the most overpowered Planeswalker in the slightest, and I think most people will agree with me there, but she is very useful, as standard currently is in this situation. So, as far as board wipes are concerned, we want to go back on those, because we of course cut ourselves Cleansing Novas for the Mortifies. We've actually replaced the Nova effect with Kaya's Wrath. Kaya's Wrath is insanely easy to cast in this deck, so don't let that mana cost fool you. We will be casting this on turn 4 fairly consistently should we want to. So double white, double black, sorcery speed, destroys all creatures, and then you gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way. Now, this is a pretty reasonable thing. Most people would see the downside of this card, or the potential upside of this card being a little bit underwhelming. You don't really want to wipe the board if you've got creatures in play, but in this deck, most of our creatures, actually all of our creatures, are going to be tokens. So we've really not invested too much into the board state, so we're quite happy to wipe the board with Kaya's Wrath. Also, gaining us life is pretty crucial in a fair few games as well. So if we do have a few Dawn of Hope tokens and they're not really getting through, and our opponent has a bigger board than us and we're just chump blocking with our Dawn of Hope tokens, we can use Kaya's Wrath, kill everything on board, and gain a little bit of life along the way. So pretty sweet there. I have been significantly impressed with Kaya's Wrath. I don't think it's a board wipe that you want to play outside of Orzhov, but in this deck, it is absolutely perfect. I love it. We've also got 4 copies of Vraska's Contempt as well, because we need to deal with Planeswalkers somehow, and also big creatures that do not like dying. There is a lot of aristocrats kind of effects here, so having exile is very important. Vraska's Contempt is one of our ways of handling that. 2 and 2 black, instant speed, exile target creature or Planeswalker, you gain 2 life. So yet again, another bit of life gain for the aggro matchup, another nice way to stabilize. We can also take care of like Rekindling Phoenixes, which are absurdly annoying, is our main way of doing that as well. So alternatively, we can like cast down a Moment of Craving, but our opponent gets a 2-for-1. Vraska's Contempt is our way of getting a 1-for-1 in that situation. Finally, we've got 2 copies of Eldest Reborn for the control matchups and for late game stuff. If our opponent has been killing our Khans and our Kayas, we can use the 3rd chapter there to get value at least out of our own graveyard, but the likelihood is that we want to use this thing on either Planeswalkers from our opponent, high value creatures like Niv Mizzet or Carnage Tyrant, that kind of thing. So Carnage Tyrant is very hard for us to deal with outside of our Wraths and our Settles and things like that, so we can use this Eldest Reborn if we've been controlling the board sufficiently, which hopefully we should have been doing up until this point. We can use that to kill Carnage Tyrant without having to target them. Forcing our opponent to discard is very good as well, depending on the matchup. And then, of course, the Chapter 3 allows us to reanimate, at the very least, a Khan or a Kaya. So it's pretty cool there. The mana base is pretty simple. We got ourselves 4 copies of Godless Shrine. This is the new Allegiance Shocklands. So if you have seen your Shocklands in the previous set, this is the Orzhov variant. Enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, then it enters the battlefield tapped. So it's a tap land in turns 1 and 2 if we want it. Most of the time, though, we should probably have something like Fountain of Renewal on turn 1. So the likelihood is that we actually don't bring this down on turn 1, but maybe turns 3 or turns 2, depending on our current hand. then it's perfectly fine to go down. It's really nice mana fixing as well, and very crucial if you're going to run things like Kaya's Wrath, because we do need double white and double black by turn 4, and we do have a lot of multicoloured stuff as well. So really fixing our mana. This is one of the cards that the deck was missing in the past, and I feel like this deck has actually been significantly improved just by the Shocklands alone. We also have 4 copies of Isolated Chapel as well, which is the Checkland version. Comes into battlefield tapped unless you control a control a plains or a swamp, which includes the basics, 7 plains and 8 swamps, but also includes Godless Shrine, which is a plains swamp. So very good. Finally, we've got 1 copy of Archer Vraska as a little bit of card advantage. We already have our treasure maps for that role as well as Karn, but Archer Vraska, when we've got a completely empty board, is very nice as well. It has Ascend, which means we need the City's Blessing in order to use it, which is having 10 or more permanents in play at any given time. The best way to flip an arch is either to make a treasure map and flip it, and get loads and loads and loads of treasures. That's the absolute best way to do it, or making tokens with Dawn of Hope. That's another way to get the City's Blessing very quickly. And once we've done that, basically have a 6 mana tax to draw a card additionally every single turn. Very nice indeed. On to the sideboard. So, if we're up against control, specifically control that has counter spells and things like that, what we want to be doing is trying to get down our big body threats. Most of the time we'll probably have the Fountain of Renewal and Dawn of Hope combo, but if we don't have this in turns 2, we can also bring in the Dawn of Hope just to increase the odds of that happening. We also have 4 copies of Duress, which allows us to pull the counter spells out of our opponent's hand to allow us to force down things like Dawn of Hope and Fountain of Renewal, making sure that we get our win con in place and our opponent can do very little about it. They're basically forced to counter this if they have the option to do so. We also have the extra copy of Cast Down here, just in case Moment of Craving's not too useful. We can shore up that little section there. It's also just good against creature-focused decks as well. Very nice piece. 2 Moment of Cravings, again for aggro. We've already talked about this one, but we'll have a full 4 copies of Moment of Craving. It is superb against mono red, kills nearly everything, and the life gain is awesome. And another control piece as well. Turn 3, we also have the History of Benalia. Most people know this one by now. It creates 2 white night creature tokens with vigilance over 2 turns, and then turns them into pretty big beaters. 4 3s coming over for 8 points of damage total. So it is guaranteed to give like a 2-for-1 most of the time. We can get this one under a counter spell if we're on the play quite a lot of the time, so very nice there. As I mentioned, we also have a second copy of Kaya in here just in case the graveyards need a little bit of attention. We can bring her in if she is quite useful. There are certain situations as well when we might want to bring her in just for that little bit of life gain, though you probably want to seriously consider not doing that most of the time. Finally, we have 3 copies of Ixalan's Binding. For anything that we really can't deal with that is very troublesome, Ixalan's Binding allows us to not have to deal with it for the rest of the game. 4 mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield, and your opponent cannot cast spells with the same name as the exiled card. So if we see a Teferi, our opponent taps out for it, we could maybe duress them to get their counter spell out and then bind their Teferi, and then we don't have to deal with it for the rest of the game. Superb value there, and really just locks out some of our opponent's win conditions. The amount of times that I've played Ixalan's Binding in my deck and eaten all of my opponent's win conditions so that they can do nothing is unreal. I absolutely love Binding. Hate it being played against me. You should be aware that if your opponent binds your Binding, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble and gonna have a bad time. But anyway, guys, that is gonna do it for the deck tech. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you do want to see the matches with this one, you can wait until the end of the video where there will be a link to the first matchup. There is also a link down in the description below as well. You can go follow that, and a deck list if you want to export this and import it into your game to play it. I highly recommend this deck. It is a lot of fun and pretty competitive as well. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe, hit that bell icon so you get notifications when videos go live in the future, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.